What are the cultural differences between India and Israel? This is going to be fun. For those of you who don't know, my name is Revital Moses. I was born and brought up in India and I now live in Israel. It's been a few years now, so I thought this could be the best time to create a video on cultural differences. As per my experience, there are a couple of similarities, but there are definitely some distinct differences between the two cultures. I love both cultures. I wouldn't say equally. Like, I have my days when I love the Israeli culture more than the Indian one. There are some days where I like the Indian culture more than the Israeli. You know how it is. I embrace both of them. So let's get into it. So let's start with the most basic: education. I believe Indians are obsessed with education. So much so that sometimes it can become a competition between the families as a status symbol. My son is an engineer from IIT and has now been accepted to Harvard for MBA. How amazing is that? Ooh, that's amazing. But my daughter is a triple MBA in finance, marketing, and economics from India's best business school and now runs her own company. I am not kidding. This is how conversations take place between families, between relatives, between neighbors. It's like a thing in India. People are obsessed with education. But on a serious note, Indian families do value education more than art, culture, and being a content creator as a career. I mean, I don't blame the system. Education does bring great opportunity and a stable income if used smartly. But after the tech revolution, where companies like Apple and Google are saying that we are willing to hire people without a degree, has really gotten into everybody. And I do see a trend, especially with like young millennials and Gen Z, not completing their degrees or not even attempting to enroll for a degree and just developing skills. In Israel, once you turn 18, you need to enroll to the army as a part of the Israeli law and serve for a few years, and then you can focus on education. The army also has a special offer where they pay for your education, but you need to serve some extra years in the army. A lot more Israelis are opting for the army to pay for the education because, hello, education in Israel is very, very expensive. So they might as well serve a couple of years in the army and let the country pay for the education. But generally speaking, I don't see Israelis obsessing over a college degree. Indians definitely speak better English than the Israelis, and there is a reason for it. Did you know, among the non-native English-speaking country, India holds the largest English-speaking workforce. Due to country's British colonial past, English remains an official language of the federal government and medium of instruction in educational institutions run by it. There is a second reason. I mean, I like to believe there's a second one. For the longest time, India was seen as the third world country, very poor, people uneducated, only focuses on agriculture. They don't know anything else apart from just farming. And I think Indians eventually got fed up of being told what to do and finally said, we are going to do this. We are going to make a mark on this world. One way to do that is to speak the language which is spoken mostly everywhere in the world. I won't say like everywhere, but mostly all countries speak that language, and that is English. And that's why a lot more Indians speak English than the rest of the world. Actually, a lot more people ask me here, like, how can I speak such good English? And I'm like, what do you mean by that? Do you think India is still what it was like 50 years ago? I have to say, for people who call Indians uneducated, I think you should probably look at yourselves. We have come such a long way, but people are unaware because they're like so caught up in their bubble. In India, private as well as public schools have made sure to teach English from the young age of 4. I am not kidding. I started learning English from kindergarten. And it's not like having English as the only subject. We learn all our subjects in English: history, geography, mathematics, name it. All our subjects are in English except for the languages, of course. Now you're going to ask me that all Indians don't have access to schools and universities, but Indians do have access to cheap internet. So this way, people have access to a free platform called YouTube, where everybody and anybody can learn the language very easily and also practice it. Now, Israeli schools don't teach English till 3rd grade, and English is basically their only subject. What I mean by this is geography, history, even mathematics is all taught in Hebrew. But a lot more Israelis learn their English from American movies and like Netflix and like these other places. But yes, Israelis do struggle to speak English. Marriages. I think this is very interesting because I thought Israel would not focus on marriages. But just like India, Israelis also love to get married and they celebrate marriages out loud. It's a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing in both countries to find a partner, settle down, have kids, have your own family. It's celebrated. Especially in your mid 20s and late 20s is when people encourage you to find a partner. Although I do see a trend, especially in India, like young millennials, Gen Z, they're focusing more on their careers. I mean, they're getting married to their careers than being married to a partner, which is completely okay. But I definitely see that trend, and it would be interesting to see where it goes in the next 5 to 10 years. The next topic is very, very interesting. I find it very interesting because I experienced it firsthand. You know how we Indians love to sugarcoat everything and avoid uncomfortable conversations so we don't hurt other people's feelings and also protect our own reputation? Well, that's not the case with Israelis. Nobody can just rip a band-aid as good as the Israelis do. They are so direct. Wow, like it's an understatement. Like you have to experience it firsthand in Israel. So when I visited Israel, it was so different because I was a tourist here. But when I actually moved here, I started to interact with the locals and I was so annoyed. I just felt like they didn't have the etiquettes and they weren't polite and they were only like screaming and like just so annoying. But now when I look back, it's one of the best traits Israelis have. What I mean is, even if I disagree with one of my Israeli friends, I can say it to their faces and we would still be friends at the end of the day. Let's talk about punctuality for a second. So let's say if we have an event at 5 o'clock, all right, 5 o'clock, an American would be there at 4:45 p.m. An Israeli would reach at 5:30 p.m. and an Indian would reach there at 6:30 or 7 p.m. I feel like both Indians and Israelis are not very good at being punctual, but if there was to be a competition, I think Israelis would win it. I mean, almost punctual. The award of almost punctual goes to the Israelis. Before you say anything, I have to clarify this, that me being born and brought up in India and now living in Israel, I am a punctual person. Like I show 5 minutes or even like a minute before a meeting or like the event starts because it's just like it's my personality. I like to show up on time. So basically I am that friend that reaches first, books a table and makes sure everything is in place and I have to keep waiting for everybody. Hospitality. So if there was to be a spectrum of warm cultures to cold cultures, India falls among the cultures which is like the most warmest. Then in between there's like the Israeli culture and then there's like the Western. I feel like India is the best in terms of hospitality. Hands down. Nobody can beat India in terms of hospitality it gives to its guests and its immigrants. I speak to a lot of Americans and they say that they find Israeli people very warm, which is not wrong. Israelis are warm people, but then I ask them like, honey, have you been to India? Because trust me, like I'm not saying that Israelis aren't warm and like nice, they are, but Indians are warmer. You know what I mean? So traveling within the country, in my head, I'm like, bigger the country, the less you travel, because obviously you want to save time and money, and smaller the country, you might travel more. But it is the opposite. Let me explain. So when I was living in India, I lived in Thane. Okay, this is like a city 30 to 35 kilometers away from Bombay. And considering that most of my friends and like my dance group and like everything was in Mumbai, I used to travel almost 6 days a week, almost 1.5 hours or 2 hours one way to Bombay. And I was pretty chill about it. In fact, a lot more people travel to Bombay from Dombivli, Kandivali, Thane, like the other side. Like people are used to traveling long distances in India. I'm assuming because the local transport is a lot more accessible, like you have auto rickshaws and the trains are like every 2 minutes and there are buses. So I am assuming that it is easier for people to travel long distances in India. But in Israel, even if you have to travel a distance of 5 kilometers, people rethink of stepping out of the house. I don't know if they're just lazy or the public transport isn't as good as India. I mean, yes, there is public transport, but the frequency of buses and trains is like every 15 minutes or 20 minutes. So, but still, like 5 kilometers is not a big deal. But people will still crib. I just don't understand this. I mean, yes, there is the Tel Aviv traffic, but have you been to Bombay? Have you seen the traffic in Bombay? But people will still travel in that traffic. I just don't understand. I don't think I will ever. But yeah, people don't travel within the country so much. I think they travel more to Europe than within the country. Safety. We all know that both countries have their own safety issues. India is unpopular for being unsafe for women, robberies, and health, and Israel is unpopular for terrorist attacks, stabbings, and road accidents. If you're going to come raging at me in the comment section, then trust me, we all know this is the truth. I know this is a tricky one, but this is basically my point of view. As a woman, I feel a lot more safe to roam around by myself, dress up the way I want, and walk home late at night without having to call my parents. In India, I feel a lot more at home and I don't have to think twice about me or my family members living to see another day and have a good time with our friends. Boundaries. I don't think the brown culture, I mean specifically the Indian culture, has a concept of boundaries. It doesn't matter if it's your parents or your siblings or your partner. They just don't know when and where to draw a line. I think it's also to do with generations. The older generations don't understand the concept of boundaries compared to, let's say, the younger millennials and Gen Z. On the other hand, Israelis know how to balance it. I feel like it's more situational. For example, if I have extra work and if I can't get that work done before 6 p.m. and 6 p.m. is like my end of day, then nobody's going to force me to do it unless it's urgent, but nobody's going to really push me to get that thing done, and I can always say I will get this done first thing tomorrow. Versus if I'm going through a breakup, then they'll want to know all the information. They'll try and dig up information, but it'll also give me space if I don't want to speak to them. That's what I mean by situation. Reaching out to professionals. I feel like this is so different in both countries. Israel has surprised me in so many ways. So I have a lot of interactions with a lot of people on a daily basis. So LinkedIn is like a big thing here. It's a big deal. You make a lot of connections on LinkedIn. You meet over a cup of coffee and then, you take it from there. And I'm not talking about like professionals of my level. Professionals who are CMOs, VPs, directors, if I message them on LinkedIn asking for a favor or asking for help, they get back to me. It's insane. Like, I didn't have that in India. I'm not saying all of them got back. Yes, some of them didn't respond, ghosted me, or like responded but never helped. Yes, there are cases, but most of them did get back and helped me whenever possible. If I compare the same situation in India, it is just so hard to get in touch with people. Like, if I need a favor or if I need help from somebody who's senior to me, I need to follow up at least 5 times to get their attention. I still haven't figured what could be the reason. Maybe because of the population, a lot more people are reaching out to these professionals. I mean, I understand, like, if I am bombarded with messages, I might not respond. I usually do, especially when I get a lot of questions on emails and on comments. I do sit there and try and respond to as many questions I can. I'm sure like not everybody thinks like me. I don't get the same attention or the response like I get in Israel. I don't want to say I'm biased towards the Indian culture because I'm born and brought up there, but there are some things that I would definitely love to change. I think number one is I would love for Indians to be a tad bit punctual. I think it really does matter if you're punctual, because then you're respecting someone else's time. And yes, please be open to trying different cuisines. I have so many Indian friends who crib about traveling abroad. They want to explore the world, but they don't want to explore the cuisine because it's too bland. And I'm like, come on, I understand. Indian cuisine is one of the best cuisines in the world, hands down. But when you're traveling, you need to be open to not just exploring the space, but also explore the food. So stop complaining and start eating. I think Israelis need to work on being a little more polite, is what I think. I love the directness. I would never change that. I just feel like they could express it in a very polite way is what I would say. That's pretty much for this video. I think this was such a fun video. I really had a great time scripting and filming and sharing my experiences from both the Indian and Israeli culture. I know they're very unique in their own ways, but they're very similar as well. If you want me to create a video on cultural similarities of India and Israel, please go down in the comment section and let me know, and I will get to creating another video on cultural similarity. Ooh! And tell me which is the best cultural aspect that you love about India and Israel. I would love to know. And I would also love to know if you think differently of what I said, because I know everybody is different, everybody's likes and dislikes are different, but I would love you to share it with me because it helps me broaden my perspective. And also when people go to the comment section, they might learn something from your comment. So go down in the comment section and tell me what you love, what you dislike, anything and everything about the Indian and the Israeli culture. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more content on India and Israel, and I will see you next time.